Up until now, we've kind of met people in our journey through collaboration. And many, of course, understand our industry and we work directly with. And at this point in time, we're going to bring our guests in from outside. And they still have some link to what we all do, but I thought it would be nice just to get a real insight into collaboration in their world and how it works and the challenges that they have. And we're really excited to have three guests, all from Brisbane, who are here today. And let me introduce you, and then we'll hear from them individually, and then we'll have a chat and, of course, questions from you. Professor Michael McGuckin, who is the Principal Research Fellow and Deputy Director at the Mater Research Institute here in Brisbane. He's the author of over 130 scientific publications and has held 4 patents, and we're very excited to have Michael here, and he'll expand on the work that he does as well, and particularly about research and collaboration there. Celestine Doyle is Commercial Partnerships and Development Director for Brisbane Powerhouse. Many of you there on a few nights ago. And Celestine has more than 25 years' experience in arts sponsorship and business development, marketing and communication, including a variety of roles with the Queensland Art Gallery, the Gallery of Modern Art, and most recently as Commercial Partnerships and Development Director with Brisbane Powerhouse. And also joining the panel is Professor Suzanne Miller, who's the CEO and Director of the Queensland Museum Network, joined the network in 2013, and since that period the Queensland Museum has almost doubled its visitation, becoming the most visited museum in Australia and attracting close to 2 million visitors in 2015-2016. And I can't wait for Suzanne to share her story about the World Science Festival, the very first one that Brisbane enjoyed this year, away from New York for the first time. It's a great story about collaboration, so there's going to be lots of sharing this afternoon. So let's get underway and welcome Professor Michael McGuckin to begin the proceedings. Thank you, Michael.
Okay. Do you want me to come up there?
You can walk around. Yeah.
Okay, hello everyone. Thanks for the invitation. Pleasure to be here. I'm a health research scientist. I've got a science degree and a PhD, and I work at the Mater. We have a research institute there, and we're really the research arm for Mater Health Services. For those of you who aren't from Brisbane, the Mater is a pretty large hospital complex here that was established by the Sisters of Mercy over 100 years ago, and it provides both private and public sector health services. So it's contracted by Queensland Health to deliver public services. As a health research scientist, collaboration is really important. Our researchers collaborate with people all around the globe. And research is a kind of interesting mix of collaboration and competition. We all compete pretty hard to win research funding and to be the first to find interesting things and publish them. But we kind of realise that we're not expert at everything and we need to work with other people to be effective. So there's a bit of a tension between who do you collaborate with, who do you compete with in this business, like many other businesses. What I thought I'd do today is talk about 2 examples of collaboration from our network. So I'm the Deputy Director of the Mater Research Institute, so I'm involved in running research myself, but also in organising research and trying to make it happen. First is a organisational type example, and the second one involves trying to herd researchers, which is a bit like herding cats, I guess. And so the first one is a relationship that we have developed with the University of Queensland. So a bit of historical context. The Mater started a research institute in 1998. It was always a passion of the Sisters of Mercy to start a research institute. And it grew up as an independent research institute as part of the Mater, but it had a kind of loose affiliation with the university, which was pretty loose and certainly had no sort of legal or financial arrangements tied to it. But it became pretty evident as we grew and became more successful that it would be really important for us to have a strong relationship with the university. And there was a number of reasons for that. The university brings enormous infrastructure that we can utilise. You know, we can't build our own libraries and access all that sort of data and information that's out there. Well, it would be expensive to do that when someone else in town is doing that very well. They have enormous resources in terms of equipment and things across their different campuses. A pool of researchers that we can collaborate with, and also importantly for us, a lot of experience in administering government grants and doing all that sort of bureaucratic stuff behind the scenes that we were basically duplicating in our organisation. So there were benefits for us. For the university, what they were chasing was a good clinical interface. They have a lot of basic research that wasn't interfacing very well with the clinical environment. So it was health research, but it was based at the university and wasn't really interacting with the hospitals or the health system. And they wanted to get a closer interaction. And the beauty for them of MARTA is that it was an organisation that was run by not a government, but by a business. In fact, you could talk to a CEO and nut out a deal and do things. So that was an attraction for them that was different to working with Queensland Health, which is a very bureaucratic government sort of organisation. So there were some benefits for both of us, and that, you know, that's really got to underlie any successful collaboration, I think. If both sides aren't going to win something out of this, it's probably not going to occur and probably not going to work. But there were hurdles. Well, one of the things we wanted to do was administer all our research grants through the university, but suck all the money out and spend it at MARTA. And one of the benefits from the university is that would give them an extra, we push about $25 million a year in research funding and philanthropy through the university now. And that's about 3% of their research effort. So it pushes them up a little bit closer to the top of the pile in Australia in terms of being the most research active university, and they are in fact have reached that point now. So the government also gives the university money on the basis of how much research funding they're getting, and part of this deal was that the university would pass some of that on to us. But we had to make sure that the government wasn't going to see this as a bottom of the harbour deal and break it, so we had to negotiate with government and make sure that if we did this, it was all going to happen. We've got a legal agreement that sits behind this collaboration, and that was quite difficult to nut out, actually. The lawyers from both sides toed and froed over minor things on reflection in that legal agreement. Really, it doesn't matter, that legal agreement. No one refers to it much. It's really what the people who drive these organisations want to do that makes things happen. I guess it's a fallback point if something goes wrong in this collaboration. And now we've got this thing that's working really well and it's spinning off new ideas and new things. So now we've revamped the old children's hospital at the MARTA into a new nursing school. So UQ have now got a nursing school on the MARTA campus. The OP scores for that nursing school in midwifery at MARTA, because you can tick a box saying I want to do it at MARTA. I think it was 4 for midwifery and 5 or 6 for nursing. So there's a whole bunch of, and that's much lower than any other place that people want to do nursing. And so they're getting a whole bunch of smart people coming in because the MARTA brand has helped them with that. We have an alliance now, the Institute, with the Queensland Brain Institute, which is part of the university. Fabulous basic neuroscience institute, but again, not really feeling like it was having an impact in the clinic. MARTA has started a big neurosciences effort clinically in the old children's hospital, and we've now enmeshed those two together. And the Vice-Chancellor has seen the benefit of that and thrown $5 million in for the next 5 years to help us recruit a bunch of research active clinical scientists from overseas, and we've actually recruited a bunch of people who are arriving in the next 12 months. And they were attracted by the technology at QBI and the ability to work clinically at MARTA. And so this is an example of how this thing works. My next example is what we call the Queensland Melanoma Collaborative, and this is the herding cats thing. So I'm actually the chair of the Medical and Scientific Committee of the Cancer Council Queensland, and Queensland is the melanoma capital of the world. We have a lot of sun exposure. We have a lot of people like me with Irish skin that end up with melanomas. And it's important that we're leading melanoma research. And there are some very good melanoma researchers at QIMR, at UQ, at QUT, at Griffith, within the Cancer Council itself, but there was nothing really binding them together. Some of them were collaborating with each other, but there was nothing that was gluing them together and focusing them on big projects. There's a charity called Smiling for Smitty that you might have heard of. It was a charity that was started by a guy called Mark Smoothie, whose mate Adam Smitty died of a melanoma when he was quite young. And Mark and a couple of his mates decided they were going to ride their bikes from Brisbane to Townsville to raise money for research. That was about 10 or 15 years ago. Now they're raising about $1 million a year for cancer research and cancer services via this charity. And there's a whole peloton of people at the moment riding between Brisbane and Townsville for this. And they have a big team of people that go on the Noosa triathlon and stuff. Mater Foundation, which is the philanthropy arm for Mater, has a tight relationship with this foundation, and we were receiving funding for melanoma research. Some of that we were pouring into our labs that do melanoma research, but we decided we should spend some of that money trying to bind people together into a collaborative in Brisbane. And it didn't really take too much. We employed someone part-time to actually make this happen and start dragging people together into meetings. We employed some people within the hospital who were gathering patient information and tumour samples and things like that and making them available to the wider group so that there was a benefit that people could access, researchers could access this stuff for their research studies. And now we've got this collaborative group that meet regularly. They're formulating large projects across the group of people, applying for bigger blocks of funding to work together, and it's all starting to come together just because we kind of herded them together. They kind of all knew about each other, would see each other occasionally, but you had to sort of push them together to work together. So they're just two examples of, at an organisational level and more at a researcher level about the sorts of things that you have to do. And, some collaborations will spontaneously arise. A lot of the researcher collaborations arise in a bar at a conference or something, where people get to talk and strike a chord. I've got a mate in Manchester I collaborate with that pretty much met in a bar at a conference, and we Skype each other all the time and talk science and do stuff together. But some of it you've actually got to drive and sort of put structure together to try and get people to work together. So that's
all right. Thank you.
To say.
Thank you, Michael. Celestine.
Okay. Thanks very much. I'm really pleased to be here actually because collaboration is a subject that's very, very dear to my heart, and it's really formed the basis of my work practice over many, many years. So my professional and working experience has been primarily in arts sector, marketing, sponsorship, business development, and as I said, collaboration's been absolutely critical there. A quote that I love that really I think succinctly expresses what collaboration is by the deaf and blind American writer and activist Helen Keller, who said, "Alone we can do so little, together we can do so much." And I think that just absolutely summarises it for me. Arts organisations traditionally have limited resources, and it's always through creative and artistic as well as sponsorship and partnership collaborations that we are able to achieve so much. The results and outcomes of great collaborations can not only, I think, be for your own team, for your own organisation, but I've seen it for across the whole industry sector, even then in a city, a state and a country. And I think collaborations are also incredibly personally satisfying. A recent example of a successful collaboration that would be relevant for your sector that I've been involved with in my work at the Brisbane Powerhouse, where I've only now been for a couple of months, is a collaboration between the Powerhouse and Moreton Hire, which I'm sure you know as Australia's leading business event and special event providers. So Moreton is one of the Powerhouse's sponsors and partners working with our events team, and each year they work with our events department to stage a showcase and for PCOs, event organisers, bridal affair organisers and brides themselves to really showcase their work, their facilities, as well as the Powerhouse as a venue. So Moreton and our events team get together and they create and decorate several themed event setups throughout that building. So you were there the other night and you can imagine how fabulous that potentially would have looked. So throughout the building, as well as outside the building itself, a most incredible hexagonal glass marquee when Patricia was there, so she can tell you about that. It was just extraordinary. Then all our other partners that are related to our events and suppliers were also involved in the showcase. So that was our florist, photographer, caterers, digital equipment hire team and wine suppliers. So together this was an incredible collaborative business development opportunity and a profiling opportunity that individually just would not be possible. Then my development team also collaborated to stage our annual partners lunch. So we do a partners lunch at the Powerhouse every year to recognise and thank our partners and to impress them and reinforce how wonderful it is to be involved with us. So we had this fabulous event on the Powerhouse stage that was again set up as through the involvement of all those partners. So our event partners and suppliers then also had a business development opportunity. Morton Hire and the events team then had a fabulous setup that could be seen then as part of the showcase that night as well. One of the lessons I learned from that event was the importance of really planning in advance the PR and social media to really to benefit the partners and post that event as well to really maximise their business development opportunities. It was a terrific event. But the most successful, I suppose, example of collaboration in my professional experience to date has been at the Queensland Art Gallery and Gallery of Modern Art, where I worked for many years. Over several decades, the gallery built an internal approach that was really multidisciplinary, and that came out of the fact that they were presenting and developing and managing really large-scale exhibition projects, one of which was the Asia-Pacific Triennial of Contemporary Art, and also international blockbuster shows. So the practice of working together in cross-disciplinary teams became second nature and really familiar. And in that process, you'd have curators, programmers, designers, workshop, marketing, educators, all around the table together and really developing new ideas, innovating, as well as delivering the actual project itself. So over the years, my team and program expanded from marketing to include sponsorship, then retail, and then our in-house food and beverage division. So just within our team, our potential to collaborate and innovate also grew. And it was a fantastic moment for me when we saw an executive chef and our retail shop managers sitting around the table contributing to projects and program ideas, and that was very unique within an art gallery environment. And out of that grew some incredible programs and marketing opportunities. So. And corporate entertaining and food and beverage packages became part of program ideas as well as marketing and experiences that we could contribute. So with this multidisciplinary approach in the DNA of the gallery, as it were, we also developed a model of working collaboratively with our external partners and sponsors. And the aim of that was to really deliver and develop and deliver integrated marketing, communications and tourism campaigns for international blockbusters. After the Gallery of Modern Art opened here in Brisbane in 2006, the gallery embarked on a really intensive program of blockbuster exhibitions, and they included shows such as Andy Warhol, Picasso and his collection, Valentino, hats from the V&A, Matisse, Drawing Life, masterpieces from the Prado, Sai Goi Chung and Future Beauty, another fashion exhibition. we would literally bring around the table together in advance in our planning stages the representatives of our partners and collaboratively plan and deliver our marketing campaigns. Each partner provided a substantial financial and or in-kind investment as part of this value-add marketing model. So ultimately we found that our combined campaign value could be anywhere between $1 and $2 million. So our participants in these collaborative campaign projects included firstly our corporate cash partner, and that varied in different times. We had Santos, which sponsored our big summer shows, Audi, mainly focused on our contemporary exhibitions, and Acciona, who was the principal partner of Prado. Then our wonderful partners, Brisbane Marketing and Tourism and Events Queensland, were integral and key collaborators, along with other tourism industry partners, which often included Virgin Airlines and Blue Holidays, Singapore Airlines, Queensland Rail, Brisbane Airport Corporation, wholesalers and hotels such as the Hilton and Sofitel. Our media partners could include News Limited. We had a couple of shows where we had The Australian, the Courier Mail, the Herald Sun and their magazines all under the News Limited banner as a partner of one show. Oz Stereo, the Seven Network, ABC Radio National, Clemenges, our creative agency, and out-of-home suppliers such as Adshell. And at times we often would work with shopping centres and boutiques, particularly when we had those fabulous fashion exhibitions like Valentino and hats. So this collaborative approach achieved much. An integrated campaign that achieved maximum reach across multiple platforms and markets. Our partners all had a real sense of achievement and involvement in the success of the project, as well as then achieving their own objectives. We built a family of really loyal and committed partners who collaborated then together over multiple projects, and we had that continuity over time. We achieved really successful outcomes for the gallery, but also for the participants, and many tourism and economic benefits for Brisbane and Queensland. But we also, I think, together generated a great pride in the new gallery and in Brisbane as the host of these exclusive international art exhibitions. And I could pick up on the point that Michael made about competition. It is an issue when starting such collaborations sometimes, and we had that experience earlier on in the years when we used to, the galleries themselves, some of the state galleries used to participate. So a big show like in the early days, like we did a Matisse show and a Renoir and a Van Gogh, we'd do them across numerous galleries, state galleries. So we'd be collaborating with the state galleries and then the partners underneath that. But over time we found that as the tourism benefits of arts and culture were recognised, there was an expectation that from the tourism supporters that these shows were exclusive. So that meant it then impacted on having exhibitions across multiple galleries. Because of that competitiveness, we weren't able to continue that collaboration across. So it definitely is an issue in many sectors, I can imagine. So basically for me, collaboration's about dreaming and achieving bigger than you can on your own, building and reaping the benefits of mutually beneficial relationships, adding value, getting better bang for your buck, sharing challenges and successes. And I think collaboration, quite simply, just makes great business sense. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Suzanne.
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real pleasure to be here. I don't want to repeat what both Celestine and Michael have said, but I would like to pick up on a couple of their comments. And first of all, and because you've got those lovely pink folders on your tables, for me there's really an interesting combination of internal collaboration and external collaboration. Often when we talk about collaboration, we think of collaborating with external partners. But I firmly believe you can only do that and do that really well if you've got internal collaboration happening really well, because then you understand that as an organisation and it becomes embedded in your DNA. And so when I joined the Queensland Museum Network, we're a network of 7 campuses across Queensland. And our regional campuses in particular at that stage operated pretty autonomously. And yet, as an organisation, we had really ambitious goals. We want to be the most visited museum in Australia. We want to be the top research museum in Australia. We want to be a global leader in science, technology, engineering, arts, and maths, entanglement. We had some really big targets that we wanted to hit. And so we knew that we had to be able to operate internally very seamlessly and collaborate really well internally as an organisation, even although we were geographically distributed. So we actually brought in Paul Lloyd, who I think was with you this morning, and Think One Team, who I'd worked with in South Australia, and who helped us really build the tools and the language with which we were then able to collaborate. And that's worked really successfully in bringing the organisation together as a single organisation. So I'm simply going to say I do commend the programme, because we brought together very disparate entities within our organisation who sort of truly saw the value of coming together to be greater than the sum of the parts. And I think we based that on some internal values or rules around which we would then operate in terms of collaboration in particular. The first was that you've got to have a really good idea, a really fantastic idea around which everyone can coalesce and condense. Secondly, you've got to be really transparent in that. Thirdly, everybody's got to want to collaborate. And I'm a firm believer of really understanding very quickly who wants to collaborate with you, if you want to collaborate in a project. And honestly, if somebody doesn't want to collaborate, don't waste time and energy on trying to bring them along, because it can completely scupper your entire project, your entire idea. You've got to have people who want to collaborate. And fourthly, it's got to be fun. If people have fun in their interactions with you around a single unifying idea, then also people will come back and you'll create new collaborations and you'll have those conversations over a beer in the pub in the evening because people are enjoying themselves. And if it's not fun, then you probably have to ask why you're doing it in the first place. So I'd like to use the example of the World Science Festival just as a bit of a case study because it was a completely new event for us. And in 2014, we wanted to create something new. We wanted to create something new for the museum because we were really relaunching the museum in Queensland. We were relaunching Queensland Museum Network. We hadn't done a rebranding exercise or any of that stuff. It was already there. We just wanted to be visible. The museum was a little bit invisible, I think, and we wanted to be up there. We wanted to have our politicians know who we were. We wanted the public to know who we were, to feel a real sense of ownership. And so we thought, well, we wanted to create a kind of flagship event that would allow us to do that. And so looked at what we wanted to do. One of our key goals, as I said, was to be a global leader in STEAM engagement, entanglement. And so we thought, right, well, we'll create a really big event with absolutely no experience in running big events whatsoever in the organisation, myself included. But it seemed like a good idea. It was something that would get people talking, get a real buzz around the place, a real sense of excitement, and led by Queensland Museum. But we also knew we could not possibly do that ourselves. So we decided, well, what was the idea? And the idea was around a festival and around a science and arts combined festival, exploring that wonderful nexus between the arts and the sciences. Nothing else like it in Australia. So it was it was going to create a bit of a buzz nationally, we hoped. And we looked around internationally about who was doing good things, because there's no point in trying to reinvent the wheel. If there was something good out there, work with other people. And I really like the model that's used in New York with the World Science Festival. They've got a great brand, very high production values, very good connections into North America, but it had never happened outside New York. So literally got on a plane, flew to New York, met with them. I'd emailed them beforehand, met with them and said, so I went to the festival, met with them and said, look, you say you're the World Science Festival, you only happen in New York. How about it in Brisbane? We'll run it. So it took us about 9 months to secure an exclusive license for Southeast Asia, the Southeast Asia Pacific region. And that was just towards the very beginning of 2014. We'd secured the license so we went in June 2013, secured the license by January 2014. And then we were able to announce it. It was a little bit late because state government elections and all got caught up in that. So we were able to announce in April 2014, and the first festival was to be in March 2015. So we had less than a year. No idea how we were going to run this, having, as I said, never run a big event before. So we knew it could only happen if we worked absolutely in partnership along the cultural precinct with the Queensland Art Gallery, Gallery of Modern Art, the State Library, Queensland Performing Arts Centre, with Brisbane City Council, South Bank Parklands, with the universities, because we knew that we couldn't just do something good the first year. It had to be awesome. You know, we weren't going to start small and build up. We wanted to start big and get bigger. And so we went out with the idea to as many people as we thought would listen to us. And I have to say, it was extraordinary. The number of agencies, organizations who got the idea. So I guess it came from that idea. It was really great having that strong brand to start with. And I also think probably Brisbane and Queensland loved the idea, New York, Brisbane. And also I have to say, and I'm sorry, but loved the idea that it wasn't Melbourne, it wasn't Sydney, it wasn't Perth, it wasn't Adelaide, it wasn't Hobart, it was Brisbane. We had a lot of conversation about what it would be called. World Science Festival Australia, World Science Festival Queensland, World Science Festival Brisbane. They are all registered under us now, but we went with World Science Festival Brisbane because that's where it is, and really built up that programme. Over the 9 months between really launching or announcing the festival and launching the festival in March this year, we secured 25 new partnerships to deliver the festival because we absolutely couldn't do it ourselves. So there was a terrifying element in that. I have to say it's quite a big risk. We'd gone out and said we were going to do this, but actually knew at that point in time that we couldn't deliver. So it was extraordinarily important that Brisbane City Council, Brisbane Marketing, the state government completely got behind us, but also because this is a very high-end festival. It's all about bringing the very best and the very brightest from science, from technology, from engineering, from maths, from space exploration, from medical research, through to the performing arts, the visual arts, getting the very best people here for an incredibly highly produced, high energy, very intense program of events. So we knew we had to go into partnership. The universities were really interesting. We had to deal with our 3 principal academic partners. We wanted all of them on board, so University of Queensland, Griffith and QUT, because they're all based here in Brisbane. We went out and it came back to that sort of transparency piece. We said to all of our partners, we were really clear that there's a level of investment, and we're talking cash, there's a level of investment, and if it's this level, you're a strategic partner. Our academic partners, our university partners, all got exactly the same deal, which meant having actually all their legal teams in the same room at the time, nutting out a single agreement that they would all agree to.
Close
that
the
was
door.
The thing. That was the thing that took us the longest amount of time, was getting that. It could have been the biggest barrier, and actually didn't matter, because I doubt anybody has ever looked at that agreement since. But we got it there, and actually to the cent, they all give us the same amount of money, and I do mean to the cent. We get those checks, and it includes and 33 cents on the end, because I won't go into the details of why. But it was absolutely equal. Everybody knew what everybody else was getting from their partnership. There were no deals done behind the scenes. It was extraordinarily equitable, and it was a very transparent process. We had to bring on corporate partners for that, and most of the corporate partners we brought on were partners that we'd never worked with before. So it was an extraordinary combination of everyone coming together. And for me, the massive success of the festival was the collaboration. We put on the festival. We had a target of 60,000 visitors in our first year, and we had more than 120,000 attendances this year. Became a bit of crowd control rather than quality experience at times, but it was an amazing buzz. It certainly created a buzz. Created a few traffic jams, literally across the city as well. We had 247 participants, so our scientists and artists from 10 countries across the world. And we put on more than 120 performances across the 4 days. And of those 120 performances, I think 60 of them were world premieres, and we had a 97% occupancy rate across our entire programme. So we were utterly thrilled with the public reception to the festival. And in terms of economic return, we had, I think, it was over 50,000 visitor nights across the 4 days, equating to about $5.1 million of incremental spend into Brisbane across the 4 days. And in terms of global reach, we ended up with more than 1,400 media stories, which mentioned both Queensland and Brisbane in them, which had a combined ASR of over $10 million. So for a first event, we were truly delighted with the results. But as I say, the biggest success for me was the fact that everybody just got behind a single idea. The whole town, the whole city turned red. Red is the colour of World Science Festival. The whole city turned red. Everything was lit up red. We got so many different marketing assets provided to us free of charge. Lots of different organisations changed their lighting, not because we asked them to, but just because they got behind the idea. So it was a fantastic effort where the entire city got behind it. Local government, state government, industry, local partners, international partners, everybody got behind it. And it was an extraordinary experience, I think, for the museum as well, because 3 years into the kind of organisational restructuring and bringing everyone together, it gave the entire museum around something which they could come together and really truly test their collaborative skills that they'd been working on through the Think One Team process. So it was great fun, and we're looking forward to 2017. But it couldn't have been done unless we had those partners. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Please sit down. So there'll be time for you to ask questions as well, but I want to delve a little bit deeper because the three of you have just shared, extraordinary stories, your ability to bring people together and showcase great success. But let me ask each of you first, what has been one of the most challenging aspects of each of those sort of roles for you? Can I ask you first, Michael? You talked about working collaboratively with researchers, but for you personally, in bringing people together, for you, what was most challenging?
Some of it is a cultural thing, and Suzanne touched on this. In the hospital, in the research setting, we have people who have very different cultures. So there's people that cross those, but if the average research scientist turns up to work on their bicycle in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt, and the average surgeon turns up in their Merc wearing a suit, they might both be trying to work towards better treatment for breast cancer, but they have very different imperatives, cultures, languages, all sorts of things. And some of the things most challenging things we have to do is to introduce those people to each other and get them to talk and find out where the connections are. You take the surgeons, they're very highly trained people, very good at what they do, work under intense pressure, but they're actually a bit scared about talking to a scientist because they don't want to appear stupid because they can't remember from medical school the difference between DNA and RNA or something, So it's about trying to get, and normally when you get them together, it'll work, but you have to actually work to get those people into a space where they're comfortable working together. So that's one of the cultural challenges that we have.
All right, and for you, Suzanne, because you walked in and you made the point that this was the first time that any of you had put together a festival. So what was that like, taking people from a museum environment, many of whom I guess have been there for a long time, and changing the mindset about wanting to do something really special for this city and this country?
I think one of the interesting things was, in some ways, it was easier to persuade people outside the organisation that it was a good idea than people inside the organisation. Yeah. To be honest, I think they probably thought I was completely barking, actually. I think, but I think what was very interesting was that because year one worked, we're seeing a huge amount more buy-in from internally within the organisation now. So instantaneously, people came with fabulous ideas. So there's some really fantastic people internally who completely got it and got on board. But a lot of the organisation, I'll be really honest, were pretty equivocal about it and not quite sure. And so I think we've got over that hurdle now.
But were there moments there where you personally thought, as head of the project, that maybe it wouldn't work? Maybe we were, reaching too high?
Yes, absolutely. And you had, we had to make some really hard decisions along the way. There were a couple of places where we didn't have the right personnel, for example, and we needed to make some really tough decisions about swapping out some people and bringing in the people that we really needed to do it, because when we started, we didn't know what we didn't know, and we were really learning very fast on that journey. So we always had to understand that the result had to be extraordinary and it had to be of the best quality. And if you didn't have quite the right people, then you needed to be able to massage that. So
and you had to do that. And that's not easy, as we've been exploring the last day and a half about, getting the right team together and finding the right people. And for you, Celestine, sort of similar?
I'd say possibly as these our experience and as we kept doing these, and they were bigger and bigger every time, and I think that buy-in increasing every time. One of in my area anyway, in the marketing and so forth, it's probably delivering expectations. You go in and say sometimes, and that often happened at that kind of government media area. So, and when you've got competitiveness across media, of course, and you understand and you know that you have to deliver that. So that was often an issue. So trying to balance that everyone got what they needed, and sometimes there would be problems, and you'd have something lined up, and a government politician couldn't turn up, or they didn't want to do that media event on the day. So often it would be around the media government sorts of deliveries that we found we had issues.
Yeah, and just on that, because each of you have worked with clients overseas to build these projects. Is there a difference between collaborating at a local level and collaborating at an international level for you, Michael? I mean, did you have to kind of approach things differently from that point of view?
Well, a lot of the international collaborations that we have, I guess, are really good fits, because people have found each other on the other side of the world because they bring different talents. And there's, in a funny way, there's not so much competition between those people in
as
a
it
way,
might be,
as there might be
local.
between someone who's at UQ and QUT or something, competing against each other. But I think one of the things you really have to have in place is a committed, resilient leader who's a bit not risk averse, and because people will throw up why these things won't work all the time. This won't work. If I reflect back on the UQ agreement, and if our CEO John Prince hadn't been absolutely desperate to do this, we would have stopped 10 different times where things got thrown up by government or someone else. That it was a roadblock. You just stop and say it's too hard, I'm not going to do it. So you really do need someone who believes in it to drive these things to make them happen.
And for you, Suzanne, I mean, asking New York to pick up an entire event and to bring it to Brisbane, not Sydney, what sort of challenges were there for you?
Well, I mean, the very first question pretty much they asked in New York was, well, why Brisbane? And in fact, why wouldn't we go to Sydney or Melbourne? And look, I would say that none of them had ever been to Australia before, let alone any of our cities. But and actually, my response was, well, have any of them come and asked you? Has anybody else come and asked you? And I think also we had put a lot of effort into preparing our pitch. We do them really beautifully because our foundation team are extraordinarily talented in producing those amazing looking documents, and we had some really beautiful ideas. And because we're a scientific research organisation, we already had those international links. So, we could name drop with the best of our New York colleagues. And it did come to that, I have to say. They would put up, their co-founder is Brian Greene. I say, yeah, well, we can bring David Attenborough, and they say, well, we'll bring Alan Alda. And say, yeah, we'll bring Peter Higgs, So it was a bit that, I'm afraid. And I think basically it became like a peer-to-peer institutional thing. It was a bit like academic egos, and they felt comfortable because we were an academic institution. And Brian Greene, the co-founder of World Science Festival, is an academic. And I think that really helped, that it was like a peer institution to institution conversation. So in some ways, our global reputation helped us much more than, say, a national reputation in that space.
That's a good point. And what
I was just going to say it's absolutely similar. So for an art gallery in Brisbane, talking to the Prado or talking to these museums in Paris and throughout the world, it's a case of really demonstrating your cred first up and having a leader who can represent the organisation but then also represent everything else. And a lot of that too came down to, well, it's not just the gallery but it's the city and it's the supporters we can bring to the project, and why not Sydney, why not Melbourne? So yes, it's very much convincing the people at the other end that you have the capacity and the vision and you're able to deliver it and deliver it really well.
Yeah, and what you've all said at this point is about a team effort. That Suzanne, you said you had some doubters, but ultimately they came round when they saw what it was, the impact it had on our city, I guess on the museum, the visitor numbers, etc. Michael, I guess in terms of research, the rewards that are being, the return not only for the MARTA, but I guess for the partners as well, and for you being at the gallery, the numbers of people that come through the door. So it can work if you bring the right people together.
Absolutely, and really, and I think the Prado was a really great case in point because it was the first time that museum had ever sent an exhibition to Australia. So it really was a case of a lot of discussion, a lot of demonstration, and also friendship. I think that idea of friendship was very strong as well. We really had to develop a friendship with the the director and the senior curators and everyone there. And that played a great role as well. Numerous meetings, and at a government level, government to government, showing that there was the government support of doing this also. So, yeah, very much a whole process before the final signing of the agreement.
And do you have to be conscious of that all of the time, Michael? Having multiple partners or industry representatives, government, you talked about the bureaucracy, the government, but then it's easier for overseas. It's almost like you're juggling. And if you drop a ball, then things can become rather difficult at times.
Oh yeah,
is it a skill, do you think?
Yeah, I think it's all down to how leadership handles things and how you portray success as well. You've got to make sure that when you're successful, that you're sharing that success with all your other partners. So if you sort of engage and then you run off and say, look what we did, that tends to backfire pretty badly. So you just really remember that all the time and make sure that you're engaging them in that process. That means if it all goes bad, you can share the stuff with them as well.
For you, Suzanne?
Look, I think that's absolutely right. It's always about we as a consortium, whatever that group is, whoever your collaborators are. It's always got to be about a we, and you've got to share those successes and acknowledge the fact that you could not possibly have achieved it on your own, and that probably no one institution or organisation could have achieved it on their own. But also understanding what the success looks like for all those partners, because it'll look different for everybody. So understanding, that your partners they have KPIs, they have boards, they might have shareholders. So actually acknowledging the fact that their measure of success might be a little bit different for yours, and making sure that that's absolutely built in right from the very start.
Yeah. And for you, Celestine?
Yeah, absolutely, and also that constant communication and regular touch points throughout that project that really bring, and not only bringing in the people you're working with, but their stakeholders within the organisation as well. So they're really demonstrating within their own organisations that the project's going well, or that communication and regular touching point throughout is so important.
Okay, do we have any questions from? Yes, anyone? Kylie's around, so please put your hand up if you have any questions that you would like to ask or comments. Yes, just stand. We'll just wait for the microphone to come, if that's all right. Sorry, we just need it also for the filming, that's all. But there you are.
Hi, Anna Stewart. I'm from Brisbane. And I just wondered, did you have any partners that fell away during the process that started very enthusiastically and then felt that the agenda was not fitting their brief or had funding issues, etc., etc.? Did that happen with any of you?
No, I haven't. I mean, over time, partners can fall away for different reasons, and I think it's always really important to keep in touch with those over time, because it could be a budget issue one year and they may reconnect with you at another time. But I don't ever recall anyone having to leave a project throughout. You do whatever you could to keep them involved, though.
Yeah, this can happen quite a bit in scientific collaborations, that where collaborators not doing anything. Often that's because there's no communication or something, so that it just, people can fall away. So you've actually got to work to make sure that these things are on track and working. But if someone's really not connecting with it, I mean, it's good to recognise that and call it for what it is and say, this doesn't look like it's working for you. Do you want to pull out of it?
Just be upfront about it.
Best be upfront, and often that might be relief for those people saying, "Oh, okay, yeah, I'm out of here," and then let it happen. So it's not always going to work. And at the researcher level on mini collaborations, a lot of it's built on whether the people can get on personally, not just scientifically, but they actually can communicate and get on each other's wavelength.
Because one of the points you made in your presentation is about, they all have agendas, don't they?
Yeah.
And I think you made that point too, Suzanne, that people want to contribute, but they need to get something out of it, the KPIs, and we need to be mindful of that it's not just about having them on board and having a logo on a poster, but it's about utilising their skill set for the benefit of the organisation about the festival. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions before we might wrap things up? Okay, we might.
I would just say,
Yes.
in answer to your question, we didn't have anyone fall off, but we did have one partner who we spectacularly failed to connect with, and that was the federal government. But what was very interesting was I think there's lots of things happening at a federal level, but then there were lots of conversations happening, and we actually got to the point where we thought, we've got to deliver this festival. We're going to concentrate on the partners who want to partner with us. So we just let the conversation naturally kind of die a gentle death. But 2 weeks out from the festival, within 2 hours, myself and 4 of the team had received multiple phone calls from the federal government because the then minister had seen the TVC on Foxtel while he was overseas and had got back and said, why are we not involved? And they were on the phone saying, can our minister have a speaking spot on the stage on your opening night? And I have to say, it's highly unprofessional, but it felt so nice to say, no, you didn't. I was quite stressed by that, but it did feel very good.
And how is the relationship for the next year, I might add?
We have an agreement in draft.
Very good. Actually, that's a point of where do you call it for... You can wait and wait and wait for participants to come on board. Where do you call it? And sometimes you'll wait right to the end, or so that's always an issue.
All right, one final question for each of you. Michael, I'll start with you, and that is, what given the work that you've done and the success and the challenges and I guess the failures too, is what's the one thing that how have you changed as a result of collaboration?
I think what collaborating does is just get you off your own agenda and opens you up to doing bigger, different things than what you might have been setting out to do.
It might take you out of your comfort zone a bit, maybe?
It does take you out of your comfort zone, and that's one of the reasons that some people are reluctant to do it. It's just sort of risk averse. Well, this might not work. But for people who like change and stuff like that, it's an enjoyable experience, I think.
Suzanne, what about for you?
I think it presents far more opportunities than you'd ever have on your own. It can make life and work a lot more fun. And I think it also, for me personally, it's helped develop empathy in truly understanding what your partners need and how that's going to work and how it's going to work for them. So it takes you out of your own little bubble, which is a very valuable thing to do.
Yeah. And Celestine?
I love that challenge of seeing, so many parts coming together to really deliver a whole, and that absolutely that sense of really getting to the nitty-gritty of what it is that each partner firstly can contribute to the whole, but also what they need to get out of it, and really delivering that together. I think there's nothing more satisfying.
Yeah. All right. Will you please thank our three guests, Professor Michael McGuckin, Celestine Doyle and Professor Susan Miller. Thank you very much.
Thank you.